As many of you are aware, my initial impressions of the OG RED Komodo were somewhat mixed, especially when it comes to documentary filmmaking, which requires quick setup and adaptability. I had concerns with the black shading taking longer than I wanted to take for setup and the nuances with the SDI and the monitor. Over time, I did get used to these quirks, but it's something that I had to keep in the back of my mind every time we set up. But was I wrong about this camera and using it in a documentary setting? Let's get into that. Surprisingly, the Red Komodo adapted really well to the measured pace of our project. Our documentary primarily involved recounting past events through interviews and not a lot of spontaneous run and gun moments that we needed to capture. In this controlled setting, the Komodo was perfect. Now, we don't have the XLR unlike the Komodo X, so we just use the H4n to capture audio. And even if we did have XLR, I mean, we would have used the H4n as backup anyway, so that wasn't a really big deal for me. And we did about 9 to 10 interviews, and each of them were 2 hours or less. Typically, we would just record on the camera and let it run all the way through, and it did great except for one time. On one of the interviews, for some reason, we got an error, the camera shut off, and it lost that file after like 45 minutes in. We tried to pinpoint what the problem was, but I really couldn't find out what the issue was. It could have been a lot of things. It could have been, I don't know, the batteries or the card. But this is the card that we use right here, and it is recommended and approved by RED. So I'm not sure that it was the card, even though it could be the card, even if they recommend it, right? It can go bad or something, but we've used the card after and have had no issues. So I don't know if it was the card, to be honest. Another issue that I kind of anticipated were the file sizes from the Red Komodo. Now, like I mentioned, we were filming long interviews and we were shooting in Red Raw. But even when we switched to the ELQ compression mode, the files were very, very large. So we had to take the small budget we had for the documentary and kind of invest a little bit of that into buying hard drives to store and back up the storage. And these hard drives couldn't be cheap because they had to be reliable and fast. So we had to buy some hard drives. And I just mentioned that for you to keep that in mind if you're doing a documentary or a project that requires longer takes or longer interviews and you're filming with the Komodo. I suppose you could go ProRes too, but the files are still going to be big anyway if you're shooting for that long. So yeah, keep that in mind if you're going to use this camera for that type of work. I really don't have anything to add as far as what the image is from the Red Komodo. A lot of Reds and a lot of cameras, period, give you a very, very great image. For this project, it was that I was looking forward to and what I wanted to capture. I can't quite explain that soft, milky kind of look that Red gives you, but it's what I wanted. So that's why I picked the camera. I mentioned in the last video I made about this camera that maybe the FX6 was a better option for this sort of work, and though I still believe that, I had the opportunity of using the camera for 15 minutes and it looked too digital or video-y for my taste. But it could have been my fault, one, because it was my first time using the camera and I didn't really have time to mess with the settings or change the look or even look through the menu. And two, a lot of what I see from the FX6 from other operators who own the camera is beautiful. It looks gorgeous. So was the Red Komodo necessary for this documentary? When comparing this camera to other cameras like the FX6 and even some Blackmagic cinema cameras, my opinion is the same. Those cameras are easier to use, faster to set up, and just more adaptable to dynamic filming conditions. Just a quick side note, I am looking forward to testing the Pixis camera Blackmagic is putting out in June. Saw a lot of videos about it. I hate the same thing everyone hates, the side fixed monitor. I'm not sure why they did that, but I have to test that out myself because I'm very interested and I feel like I'm at a fork in the road of where I'm gonna go for camera systems next. And I just got to be patient here and see how things play out. But we'll talk about that in another video. So the question is, can you use a Red Komodo, or OG Red Komodo, in a documentary? And the answer is, it really just all comes down to preference. In scenarios where you have the luxury of a controlled environment and ample setup time, the OG Komodo, and even better, the Komodo X, will work just fine. But it's still my opinion that if your documentary needs a more fluid style of shooting or cinema verite style of telling the story, the Komodo is not the best choice, in my opinion. The key is to select a camera that aligns with the needs of both your project and your personal filmmaking style. If you're going to go shoot a documentary in the jungle about lions and cheetahs and you have to run and gun and change lenses, I would not choose this camera. You could do that if you feel comfortable. You can still do that. There's no rules. You could run and gun with this. I would not. If you're a filmmaker or videographer that was thinking about which system you wanted to go with to tell the story that you're currently working on, I hope that this video at least gave you something to think about. I hope you liked this video, and remember, always stay a student of the game, keep learning, and keep honing your craft. We're out. Thanks for watching.